Today we're talking about the Pathfinder Vigilante's social talents and the overall strategies and tactics for this particular build. Hello everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire, here to keep talking about the first edition Pathfinder Vigilante. We're going to wrap things up by talking about their social talents and the overall strategy and tactics, and the social talents have kind of been a tricky one for me overall. I mean, it's been hard to get into, but before we actually dive into all of that, if you're new here to the channel, then go on down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member here at the Gamer's Den. Or, if you've already gone on ahead and listed yourself on such an incredible roster of legendary heroes, then go on down to hit the like button and share the video far and wide. But now, let's go ahead and start picking this apart a little bit. And to start things off with the social talents, that's been a tricky one because, well, not the least of which is the fact that even though I've done a fair bit of researching and reading, I don't really find too many guides on the Vigilante online, and also some of them really conflict when it comes to the social talents overall, and I can see why, because so many of them really depend a lot on roleplay and the overall circumstances at the table. I mean, each one comes with, each background that you could potentially go with comes with its own benefits and drawbacks. Like RPG Bot, who has excellent guides to go through, by the way, says that there's really not much reason to select anything other than the more celebrity status kind of background and oriented talents. This gives you the greatest degree of access and wealth and resources, and I see what they're saying there, but not everybody wants to be Bruce Wayne. Some people want to be Barry Allen. Some people would rather be the Flash over Batman. And yeah, it just adds to a greater degree of variety to have those options available. Plus, your everyday Joe Schmo or Jane Farmer can, in a lot of ways, socially do more and get away with more and just kind of pass unnoticed and fade back into the woodwork of overall society. Whereas a more celebrity status kind of person, your noblemen, your wealthy merchant sons and the like, they would have a harder time both losing their tails, their guards, and becoming their vigilante selves while shedding their social persona. They have more eyes on them and drawn to them, whereas your everyday laymen, your laborers, even your artists are going to have an easier time getting away from people, especially if they have an eccentric personality that people just eat up and like, oh, that's just them, they're off to go be creative again. And really what they're doing is they're secreting themselves away and shedding their social guise and going into their vigilante selves and going out to dispense justice and take the fight to the criminal element and the corrupting rot of society, wherever that may be found. So there's really a lot to many of these social talents that is more decided by your roleplay and how you deliver things and how you kind of think it all through. And also to a certain extent what your DM's allowing you to do, but with rules as written, more hard-coded things, I find that there's fewer and fewer DMs who'd be willing to go, that is a no, especially when you have wizards and clerics and druids with full access to their full panoply of spells and yada yada yada. So that, I think, is not much of an issue there. It's just rating which ones are more effective is tricky. I mean, there are some that are clearly very useful, like, of course, now that I say that, I blank on it and forget it, and this is my fourth or fifth take recording this. There's some that are more useful that allow you to change your disguise in a much shorter amount of time. That is mechanically beneficial from a social standpoint, but then again, with a little bit of thought and careful planning, you can kind of work around that a little bit, but a good DM will throw a wrench into that and present you with a unique social situation that you're having to bluff your way through. But that just gets into the larger social cover aspect of the Vigilante overall. Regardless of the build that you go with, that is something all vigilantes will have in common. Whether they see themselves as their actual social persona and the vigilante's the temporary thing, or their vigilante is their true selves and their social identity is just the mask that they wear to fool the rest of society, both will still have that social identity that they build from and work through. And so, your social identity can do a lot for you, like case the joint, allowing you into a place and making perception checks to remember particular things about the building's layout, the positioning of the guards, the guard rotation, where certain items or rooms are located. They build that mental blueprint, and it gives them a benefit of being able to re-roll failed skill checks when they come there later as their vigilante persona. That's incredibly useful. That's definitely your blue, most useful rating kind of talent overall. But it's still difficult to classify most of these overall. But every vigilante will have a social persona, so you're going to use your social persona not only to maintain cover to hide the fact that you are the vigilante as well, but you're going to use it to support your vigilante activities, to gather information, because even artists and craftsmen can end up rubbing shoulders with some of the noble elite, especially as they develop their skills, and if they have access to items like the Monocle of Flawlessness that cuts the time in half necessary to create mastercraft items, mastercraft works of art and sculptures, and with well-invested skill points into that particular craft that they can use to make money, use as if it were a profession check. Oh my god. You can absolutely be invited to different galas or different balls and events to perform or to display your works of art. That'll give you access to some of the most high security places without having to be noble born and receive an invite. I mean, noble families have bad blood between them all the time. Somebody could easily be snubbed and left out in the cold as a way of flipping them the social middle finger and saying, you're not worthy of being here with the rest of us. You may be of noble birth and lineage, but we're going to leave you out in the cold regardless. But this artist, this low-born artist with this impeccable skill, we'll absolutely have them here over you. That can easily be a story justifiable, reasoned out way for a low-born commoner to show up there because they have an uncommon talent that has attracted the eye of the noble elite who want to really lap this up. So, there's lots of ways that could be played out. And again, that's all roleplay and storytelling. But then as far as the actual combat side of things, well, that's where things get a little bit more consistent and can be more easily rated, and you're going to be using your stealth skills overall, especially since we're going with a dexterity-oriented build. And dexterity is just already a prime stat as it is. It does so much for you. It's a boost to your initiative to several dexterity-oriented skills like stealth or acrobatics. And then you also have your armor class, and in particular your touch armor class. And touch spells are some of the more dangerous spells you could be encountering. And then not only that, but if I didn't say it already, initiative, I think I did. But you're also getting, with this particular build, using weapon finesse and slashing grace and all of these other things, you're adding in your dexterity bonus to your ability to attack, also dealing damage in place of your strength score. So dexterity is going to be absolute gold for you, and any investment into it is going to be well worth it. So you're going to be operating from stealth, getting in close. Now, several of your class abilities rely on you being noticed at some point, particularly from a round of surprise with explosive and suddenly overwhelming violence against your opponents to inflict morale status effects, rather, causing them to be shaken, frightened, or panicked. And that will really lean into the cruel enchantment, because when you strike these foes, then you're going to be inflicting the sickened condition on them and giving them even greater debuffs. And so you're really going to depend on using stealth and your other skills to get into position and really inflict this damage on them. And this is also going to help with your defense, because you're going to lean into using lighter and lighter armors as your dexterity score develops. So with lighter armors, your dexterity-oriented skills, especially with the armor skin vigilante talent, it's going to negate your armor check penalties on your skills like stealth and acrobatics, and really allow you to make maximum usage of all of this for getting into position. And then, of course, slashing grace and using your dexterity for damage. That's going to stack together really nicely and work well with two-weapon fighting, especially if you're going with more of a Zorro Vigilante build, which is kind of what I'd imagined anyways. The iconic Vigilante that inspired the Batman himself. This is a great route to go, using a paired rapier and dagger. The dagger in particular for defense, and yeah, two-weapon defense may not be the greatest two-weapon fighting feat, but it's still an added bit of defense for you to make use of, especially with such a high dexterity score, and you can still use it for offensive purposes too. And if you pair it with a parrying dagger, mistakenly called a sword-breaking dagger, it's not used for breaking swords, but you can still use that for an added bit of defense there for catching enemy blades, disarming them, and also with the defending enchantment on it, you can boost your defense even further with it. Now, aside from that, you have feats like Mad Rush, which will allow you to charge a specified target and make your full attack against them. That's a massive benefit to you, and especially if you're using the mobility feat, which will be giving you a +4 armor class bonus to attacks of opportunity, as I assume you will end up at some point charging through the threatened areas of other enemies. You're going to be able to get to your target more reliably, more safely than otherwise, and deal that full round of damage against them. That's massive. And if you're picking out targets like enemy spellcasters or whoever's the boss or is in charge and is directing and coordinating things, you can do a lot to disrupt an enemy's battle plans very, very effectively. I mean, there's just so much that you can do with this, and if you have the shadow blending enhancement on your armor, along with shadows or improved shadows that gives you a +5 or +10 competence bonus to your armor class, you're getting a 40 to 50% miss chance for when you're in dim lighting, and you could potentially end up with a cloak that allows you to create dim lighting around yourself. And at nighttime, you're going to encounter more dim lighting more often than not, so you'll be particularly difficult to hit, still have a solid defense, and then if you have the improved fortification enhancement on your armor, then any precision damage going your way, any critical hits, those have a shot at being reduced to normal hits anyways, further reducing the kind of damage you might be otherwise taking. So all the way around, this comes together and synergizes really, really nicely for a very stealth-oriented build that's capable of explosive violence and inflicting debuffs upon debuffs to your enemies. And then this doesn't even touch on the fact that you could be going the Avenger Vigilante route or the Stalker Vigilante route, with the Avenger damn near getting to be able to confirm their critical hits on opponents, and with an expanded critical threat range from a Rapier or a Kukri sitting at 18 to 20, and then with either Keen or the improved critical feat for the specified weapon, you could be looking at a 15 to 20 and then damn near auto-confirming and just dishing out piles and piles of damage on your poor targets. I mean, it's absolutely incredible and a lot of fun. Potentially a great time to be had here with this particular build. And I don't know that this particular build is necessarily broken or overpowered. It's certainly effective and it does have power behind it, but as was noted, two-weapon defense may not be the greatest feat, but it certainly is thematic and fits the overall build, especially if you want to go with a more Zorro styled and inspired kind of vigilante. But what do you think? Go on down to the comments below and let me know your thoughts. Did you like today's video? Did you dislike it? Let me know either way and hit those like or dislike buttons and we'll engage in discussion down below. And remember, if you're new here to the channel, go on down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member here at the Gamer's Den. But with all that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your Master of Lore and Storyteller Extraordinaire. Thank you all so very much for your time, and you all have yourselves a good night.